Another MP production.
Personality.
Ladies and gentlemen, just children of all ages, hang on to your seats and get ready for another podcast of The Time We Live In. And now, introducing your host, give it up for Mr. Personality.
Proudly, protesters in Vancouver supporting terrorists. Hi, I'm Brian Lilly, political columnist for the Toronto Sun. I reported all weekend on the marches that we saw in Toronto. I posted video of the marches, of what they were saying, the chants like, "We don't want two states, take us back to 48, calling for the elimination of Israel. But in Vancouver, they were even more explicit, more blunt. Here's what they were chanting on Monday night outside the Vancouver Art Gallery.
Do not wonder how revolution can be done. We must do it. Death to Canada. Death to the United States. And death to Israel.
At another point, they called out that we are Hezbollah, we are Hamas. They're openly supporting terrorist activities, glorifying the October 7th attacks, calling it beautiful. This has to stop. We can't have this on Canadian streets. The Vancouver March, specifically organized by Samadoun, an organization deemed a terrorist state by Germany, by Israel, and they have close ties to the Popular Front for the Liberation of Palestine, a banned terrorist entity in Canada. So Pierre Poilievre, the Conservative leader, called on the Trudeau government to make them a banned terrorist group
Another
in this country.
campaign is gaining strength, a campaign to remove Justin Trudeau from office. It started off as a protest against vaccine mandates, but thanks to the Canadian Prime Minister's scornful dismissal of the demands, it has snowballed into a resistance against his leadership and his politics. Truckers and farmers, interestingly, have gridlocked Canada's capital, Ottawa. Most of them say they will not leave until Prime Minister Trudeau steps down. Trudeau says he will not be intimidated, come what may. Here's a report.
The Freedom Convoy in Canada is growing in size and strength. It started last weekend as a protest against COVID-19 mandates. Barely 4 days on, it has grown into an indefinite blockade of Ottawa. The busy streets of Canada's capital are now frozen. Thousands of vehicles have descended on the city. Rigs, RVs, trucks, SUVs. They've all gridlocked Ottawa in a bid to quash vaccine mandates. Are their efforts bearing fruit? Not one bit. The Canadian government remains unrelenting. Currently in isolation due to an alleged COVID infection, Prime Minister Justin Trudeau has shoved these protesters to the margins. He has declared them a fringe and their views unacceptable. On Tuesday, he further tried to derogate their motives through a series of scornful posts on Twitter. In one tweet, he claimed that Canadians are shocked and disgusted by the protests. In another, he said his government won't be intimidated by the abuses and vandalism.
I want to be very clear. We are not intimidated by those who hurl insults and abuse at small business workers and steal food from the homeless. We won't give in to those who fly racist flags. We won't cave to those who engage in vandalism or dishonor the memory of our veterans. There is no place in our country for threats, violence, or hatred. So to those responsible for this behavior, it needs to stop.
The Canadian media says that the Prime Minister is exaggerating things, that the protests may have shut down businesses, but they have remained largely peaceful. So Trudeau's statements are only fueling public anger further. The movement is no longer just about COVID restrictions. It also seems to be about Justin Trudeau's style of politics. The protesters say they won't leave Ottawa until the Prime Minister is removed from office. Their calls are finding support from notorious anti-vaxxers from all over the world. One of them is former US President Donald Trump.
The Canadian truckers, you've been reading about it, who are resisting bravely these lawless mandates, are doing more to defend American freedom than our own leaders by far. And we want those great Canadian truckers to know that we are with them all the way. They've really shown something.
It's a watershed moment in Canada. These protests are the most drastic on record, and the support they're getting is overwhelming. They run the risk of snowballing into a Black Lives Matter style movement, with truckers and farmers becoming emblems for Canadians who have been worn down due to 2 years of shutdowns, loss of work, and a severe reduction of income. Justin Trudeau's refusal to give them a fair hearing could prove to be very detrimental. Bureau Report, WION, World is One.
Who plunge our country into misery with the complicity of the international communities, particularly USA, Canada and France. They are the ones who put this country in this misery. Today, I am fighting against the system. It's normal that they make me to be the biggest gang leader. As I always say, if it's for asking for clean water for those in need, if it's because I ask for primary schools for all children, if it's because I ask for decent houses, if it's because I ask for jobs for people in disadvantaged neighborhoods, if it's for all this that they call me a gang leader, I have no problem.
Here's what they were chanting on Monday night outside the Vancouver Art Gallery.
Do not wonder how revolution can be done. We must do it.
And breaking news coming in this time of how the Canadian government has cracked down on anti-mandate protests, and a video that has surfaced, in fact several in number, of the police trampling protesters that have emerged. This has now raised serious questions on the Canadian government's handling of protests. Niranjan joining us live on the broadcast. Niranjan, please describe for us what is happening there and how it is being looked at.
Well, there are hundreds and hundreds of videos, emerging from different cities of Canada, in Ottawa itself, and we'll play out two of these videos that have emerged on social media. People who are part of the protests have tweeted, showing about the reality of what is happening on the ground. There are reports of these protesters who've been pepper sprayed, protesters being trampled on. I want to play two of those videos. I think Suhail Seth is joining us on the phone line, but I'd like to play those videos first and then we'll take some reactions. The so-called sham of democracy, democratic protests, these are countries that lectured India. I want you to see the videos and then we'll get some reactions to this.
Oh, come on through. Come on through. What is happening here? Wow, what is this lady doing? Trampling horses. Trampling. Stop it. Stop it. What? Oh my God. They just trampled this lady. They just trampled that lady. They just fully trampled that lady. They just fully trampled that lady. Here's the lady that was trampled. No violence! We're going to top. There's nothing we can do. We're together. Hey, you don't have to hit him like that! Oh, come on through. Come on through. What is happening here? Wow. What is this?
Very disturbing images. India is very concerned. I mean, all of us are very concerned. Suhail, I hope you've seen some of these videos, Suhail. Very, very disturbing. Peaceful protesters. Some of them were not peaceful in the last few weeks, but peaceful protesters here being trampled upon by mounted police, some of them being pepper sprayed in Canada. It's so unfortunate that these are the same countries that lectured India during the farmers' protest. So sad.
You know, Ranjan, what is reprehensible is the way they treat their democracies and the way with hypocrisy look at ours. A. B. What you said is so true. These are sham democracies. These are actually dictatorial states who use the might of the law, in this case, law enforcement agencies like the mounted police, and wreak havoc. This was the man, Justin Trudeau, who became the arbiter of peace and the chronicler of hope, saying, oh, what India is doing is terrible. Did we attack the farmers? No. The farm laws were repealed. The farmers sat in protest. Yes, some incidents did occur. But no one used the might of the Indian law enforcement agencies against our farmers because we treated them and still do as family. And look at Justin Trudeau, a man who has gone into hiding.
Personality.
Breaking news. The Canadian Prime Minister has been missing for more than 14 days. Caution, he may have COVID. However, the police will be going door to door, canvassing your neighborhoods. If anyone has seen him, please phone 613-822-5555.
Going door to door. Oh, it's the 5-0. They want to know, has anyone seen this man? I said, hey, officer, what's that in your hand? It's a pic of a missing man named Justin. They want to know, has anyone seen him? Justin, where are you hiding? Justin, where are you hiding? This just in, a newscast, a broadcast. Prime Minister talking too fast. Under quarantine restriction when he's already gone through vaccination. Hear me, nation, Canadian or Canada. We stand on God to ensure our children grow up and be smart. Be free on native ground, all nations living proud. Come out and beat us so the people don't get aroused. Justin, Justin, where are you hiding? Justin, where are you hiding? I thought you were brave, and now you're always up in some underground back cave. UK, the people say, give up your parliament days. The number that didn't stand, man. We're gonna drop this hammer. Print minority, you ain't got no manners. We the majority, we lock this city, build our own democracy. As a matter of fact, you retire. Better yet, you're fired. Justin, where are you hiding? Justin, where are you hiding?
A man who doesn't have the courage to face up to these protesters, who doesn't recognize their right to protest. This was the man who was preaching democracy. And this is the same story across the Western world. The New York Times will never cover this, nor will the Washington Post. The problem, Niranjan, is we and so-called liberals in India will also not do a chew against these people. Where is human rights now? Where are all those human rights activists who park illegal money into their private accounts? Where are they today? Why are these people not raising their voices against the high-handedness of the Canadian government? They won't, because hypocrisy is their birthmark and duality is their purpose. You know, as someone just told me, when you sow seeds of hatred, those seeds rise into mighty oaks and come to bite you. And that's what's happening in Canada today. It's unfortunate, but it's the reality.
I request you to stay with me for 1 minute. Ratan Sharda is also joining us. Ratan Sharda.
Farmers in Brussels, Belgium, smashed through police barricades to protect against the European Union's policies. Demonstrators blocked streets, dumped manure and hay, set fire to tires, and clashed with police. Also, it happened across North America and other countries. Farmers across several EU countries have been protesting pressures on the agriculture sector.
Here's what they were chanting on Monday night outside the Vancouver Art Gallery.
Do not wonder how revolution can be done. We must do it. Death to Canada. Death to the United States. And death to Israel.
Barbecue from Haiti.
Particularly the USA, Canada, and France. They are the ones who put the country in this misery.
The level of admiration I actually have for China, because their basic dictatorship is allowing them to actually turn their economy around on a dime and say we need to go green as fast as we need to start investing in solar. I mean, there is a flexibility that I know Stephen Harper must dream about, of having a dictatorship that he could do everything he wanted, that I find quite interesting.
Catherine McKenna repeatedly praised China as a leader in the fight against climate change, which was absurd because China uses half of the world's coal, and sending them to China. And finally, the Trudeau government thought it would be a good idea to develop a vaccine for Canadians in cooperation with a Chinese company. And the only reason that deal didn't go through was that the Chinese government wouldn't allow the samples of the vaccine to be shipped to Canada. And so in today's context, if you're wondering about, well, why didn't the government react more quickly to these warnings from the Canadian Security Intelligence Service that China was interfering more and more in our elections in 2019 and 2021? Well, could it perhaps be because given their attitudes to China, they either didn't believe it or didn't want to believe it? And if either of those things are true, then they weren't serving the interest of Canadians, which is their job.
This has to stop. We can't have this on Canadian streets. The Vancouver March, specifically organized by Samadoun, an organization deemed a terrorist state by Germany, by Israel, and they have close ties to the Popular Front for the Liberation of Palestine, a banned terrorist entity in Canada. So Pierre Poilievre, the Conservative leader, called on the Trudeau government to make them a banned terrorist group in this country.
In America, you would hear some politicians talk about the deep state. And for me, people, without a doubt, I believe there are always puppet masters behind the scenes, powerful people who dictate policies. And for instance, we see George Bush went in the White House and a war happened. We see Obama went in there and he pushed the LGBTQ agenda. And then we see Trump went there and Trump was uncontrollable. They didn't like him because they couldn't control him. He had not created any wars when he was in power. And since Biden went in there, we see the war machine start to power up again. That tells me that it seems like when they get in there, there's an agenda that someone tells them or a group of people tell them that they must follow. And for me, people have been digging. And what I've realized that surprised me to realize that this man, Paul Schwab, he said in his own words, he controlled the Canadian Parliament. Now, I don't know how true that is, but if he said it, then quite frankly, it might be true.
But what we are very proud of now is the young generation, like Prime Minister Trudeau, President of Argentina and so on, that we penetrate the cabinets. So yesterday I was at a reception for Prime Minister Trudeau, and I know that half of this cabinet, or even more half of this cabinet, are for our actually young global leaders of the world economic forum.
That's true in Argentina as well.
It's true in Argentina and it's true in France now.
Now you kind of get the idea of people. Now, Trump running mate, Vivek, almost said the same thing about Justin Trudeau, that he's controlled.
You mentioned Trudeau in your remarks. You mentioned him again now. What do you make of the man? He's been in power for 8 years now, even though he has a minority government. He's got a coalition. Is he a cautionary tale for Americans? I don't think Americans follow Canadian politics too closely. What should an American know about Justin Trudeau?
This is a preview of coming attractions. I use that sarcastically, unless we course correct here. He's like a Klaus Schwab Jr., sort of a Klaus Schwab disciple. And I think that he is somebody who is a useful puppet. I mean, it's not that this guy is some sort of shining intellect that is somehow a visionary in his own right. He's not. He's a pawn for a managerial class, both within and outside of Canada, that uses people like him as a pawn to advance a transnational globalist agenda that has a single hegemonic view that is fundamentally skeptical of self-governance, does not believe in people's ability to govern themselves, believes in a worldview where people need to be told what the right way is or isn't to live by a small group of aristocratic elites in the back of palace halls. That was the old world European view. It's what's alive and well in Canada, unfortunately, today. And the idea that Trudeau's actually the guy calling the shots is a joke. He's just a puppet, a pawn for that deeper, what I would call permanent state. And I think that much similar to the United States, I think that that's a big part of what you're seeing happening in Canada now as well.
Last but not least, because I don't want to go too long on this, is that what I see our Liberal government did during the lockdown by forcing so many people to take a vaccine without any opposition. A lot of people retired, a lot of people quit their jobs, a lot of people's life got uprooted because under a Liberal government in a democratic society, they didn't have a choice over their body. And that, for me, people, is dangerous. That is not democracy for me. That is tyranny. And those are the real reasons why I'm leaving this great country. But before I finish the video, I want to throw caution to you. Canada plans to take in about 100 million immigrants by the turn of the century, meaning that the economy will grow, whether we're alive or not. So I would not advise any one of you watching this to root up everything and say you're going to pack up and leave. No, leave some investments in this country. The reason why I'm leaving, one, I am retired. Number two, my dollar goes further. Number three, I need to get away from a lot of things that affects my mental health. I need the sunshine, and I need a new thinking and a new environment that people can treat me with respect.
Andrew Bridgen to move the motion. Andrew.
Thank you, Sir Gary, and it's always a pleasure to serve under your chairmanship. I would like to start by thanking the Backbench Business Committee for scheduling this debate, and to the 17 colleagues from across the House who supported this application for a debate on the trends on excess deaths, following on from my adjournment debate on the 20th of October on the same issue. Sir Gary, the eyes of history are upon us. Every generation looks back in wonder at the incredible mistakes of our forebears. They will ask questions such as how could they possibly realise how wrong they were? What on earth happened to them? Why did they ignore the evidence for so long? Their values and every opportunity to learn from the mistakes of yesteryear. What madness captures men? From 2010 to 2019, annual death rates in England and Wales oscillated between 484,000 and 542,000. In 2020, there were 607,000 deaths, 65,000 more than the maximum in 2018. In 2021, there were 586,000, which is 44,000 more than the 2018 figure. After such a rise, there should be a deficit, a significant deficit. In fact, because sadly, our most vulnerable and elderly, who might have lived a while longer, were taken from us early. But in 2022, there were 577,000 deaths in England and Wales, and in 2023, 581,000. A huge rise when, in fact, a significant deficit would and should be expected. The deficit, and then some, has been filled not with the extremely old and the extremely vulnerable, but with others, many, many others, who were often young or in the prime of their lives. You might want to ascribe the excess deaths in 2022 and 2023 to the virus, but that would be a mistake. That's not what their death certificates say, and moreover, there are far too many young people dying. Far from being below the recent rolling average, excess deaths in 2022 have been above, 6% above, in fact. In 2023, when one might expect deaths to finally fall below the average, the excess has also been 6% above. These numbers are higher in the younger age groups. No one with integrity can fail to be troubled by these figures. What actually is going on? And that's what we need this debate for today. It's a problem that affects us all. It affects every community in every constituency across the country.
Here's what they were chanting on Monday night outside the Vancouver Art Gallery.
Do not wonder how revolution can be done. We must do it. Death to Canada. Death to the United States. And death to Israel.
At another point, they called out that we are Hezbollah, we are Hamas, openly supporting terrorist activities, glorifying the October 7th attacks, calling it beautiful. This has to stop. We can't have this on Canadian streets. The Vancouver March, specifically organized by Samadoun, an organization deemed a terrorist state by Germany, by Israel, and they have close ties to the Popular Front for the Liberation of Palestine, a banned terrorist entity in Canada. So Pierre Poilievre, the Conservative leader, called on the Trudeau government to make them a banned terrorist group in this country.
Yesterday, the organization chanted in our streets, in Canadian streets, death to Canada, death to the United States,
James.
and
I'm
death
a
to
war
Israel.
veteran. Went 2 times to Iraq, also went once to Afghanistan. My job in the Army was 11 Bravo. For those who don't know, that's infantry. My additional skill identifier is Bravo 4. For those who don't know, that is a sniper. First deployment was 15 months, second deployment was 12 months, third deployment was 12 months. So I've been there, 39 months of combat, straight fighting. I could take a rifle and clear a room and do all this crazy stuff. I've air assaulted out of helicopters. I've grabbed dudes and put bags over their heads and zip tied them and put them on helicopters and saw them being flown away and they've never seen again. The Iraq war did not need to happen. It should not have happened. Iraq did nothing to us. And we killed 1 million Iraqi civilians, lost 5,000 plus American soldiers. For what? It diminished our standing in the world. It damn near bankrupted our coffers. All it did was make the war machine get bigger and stronger in America. I think anybody who's been shot at and blown up and seen people blown to literal pieces is anti-war. If you're not, and this is for, I'm speaking directly to every veteran out there, if you love war, then you've never actually been in it. I don't give a damn if you serve, you've never seen somebody take their last breath in a violent situation. You've never seen it. I have. It's not pretty.
How important is it for all the Arab nations to get together in your view? What is the importance of that? How important is it for you?
Gaddafi speaks.
Importance for Arabs? You mean for Arabs?
Yes.
Of course, when they will be united in one country, not like now while they are divided. They are very weak now, economically and in the field of defense, in every field, in fact, because they are divided now. But when they unite their sources, their forces, they will be strong. They will be strong, particularly in the economic field, and they can defend themselves.
Barbecue from Haiti.
Even if we are not chained, we are still enslaved. Because today, even if we are the first black people to be independent, even if we have a beautiful history, countries such as France, the USA, and Canada have done everything to ensure that Haiti does not progress. Everything they could to keep us in this dynamic, as you can see well here.
You thought the only way to fix things and solution is to go with the gangs and fight the system. In your brain.
They call us gay. But no, we are just an armed group. We have a vision, an ideology. Personally, I say that Haiti either becomes a paradise for all of us or it will become hell for all of us.
Are you a patriot? Of course. You love your country. Of course. That's what I see.
I love Haiti a lot. I love my country very much with all of my heart, and my dream is to die here at home. That's my dream. It's my goal. I love my country. And when I look at how my peers live, it breaks my heart. For me, the best way to get the country out of this current situation, no peaceful movement is conceivable. At the end of the battle against the French, we took our independence. Despite that, France imposed a debt on us, a debt that we paid for many years. Today, we ask the French to give us back our money. We are talking about billions of dollars here. They refuse to give us our money. After France, we suffered the occupation of the Americans who stole the gold we had in the bank, everything we had. Despite their departure after the occupation, they established a system where they give all the wealth to the Syro-Lebanese, who have now become the oligarchs at the expense of the poorest. Until now, we suffer from this system.
Judge Joe Brown speaks.
Moïse. He was the president of Haiti. He was assassinated in 2021. You've got the current prime minister, Ariel Henry. He's in Puerto Rico right now. He's stranded. He can't get back. Yamir Cherizier, that's Jimmy Cherizier. He is an ex-cop who is the chief gangster in Haiti. He's a gang leader, Mr. Barbecue.
Mr. Barbecue.
Literally, he has had himself recorded eating a piece of somebody that's stripped and cooked. All right, you've got Guy Philippe. Now, he's an interesting person. The U.S. released him from custody November last year. He had been in custody since 2017. He is a national hero because way back, he was the leader of an anti-Bertrandist coup. That was somebody that got overthrown in 2004. So this hero of the Haitian people has been kept off stage, and he looks like he's the only one that could come in with the authority to put things in check. And in Haiti right now, you've got a situation that mirrors what you have in American cities. The administration is not the strong power that can say, follow me, that can intimidate, apply physical power, force, and get things done. It has essentially been an administration propped up by the U.S. government with a great interest in maintaining the credibility of the Clintons. So that means suppression of a large number of things that needed to be corrected. So you have a weak person that cannot say, follow me, who has been turned against. Now, there is another thing that they're trying to keep under wraps, and that is the current prime minister used to be pro-gangs. He was their flunky. Now they turned on him because he couldn't provide the necessary leadership. And what he had done was taken himself over to Kenya, where he's going to get a contingency of Kenyan military to come in and occupy Haiti and bestow order on Haiti in sort of a martial law situation conducted by foreign interest, which does not go over well with the Haitians. Now, see, there is a need for Haitians to get strong government again. My brother I was talking about, the late Clifford Stewart of Los Angeles, and I had to set up an international rescue detail. A certain beautiful young lady we knew was doing a documentary series over there in Haiti after the earthquake, and she stumbled onto a Catholic convent where the black nuns were taking female orphans and selling them into sex slavery or conducting actual prostitution rings out of the convent. She was covering this, and they were trying to kidnap her, so we had to take some steps to stop this from happening. Now, that kind of thing is endemic in Haiti right now, and it got exploited, according to the Haitians, by the likes of the Clintons at one point in time for their the Clintons' economic benefits. I don't know if that was Bill Clinton, but it certainly would be an implication of Hillary. We have that kind of thing where we have a power vacuum, just like we have in the cities of America, where we have administrators, but we don't have leaders. And you have street gangs taking control of a circumstance like they did in Chicago. Lori Lightfoot pulled off one of the damn dumbest stunts I've ever seen. She wanted to get street credibility by helping out what she thought were community organizations. So she put up a lot of money with what she thought were Hispanic community organizations, but they turned out to be street gangs. They used the money to buy up arms that were hijacked from several boxcars.
Here's your latest Africa news. U.S. military kicked out of Niger in humiliating exit. In a humiliating turn of events, the U.S. military has been unceremoniously kicked out of Niger. The announcement came during a joint press conference in Niamey, the capital, where the American and Nigerian militaries laid bare the details of the forced departure. Nigerian Colonel Major Mamman Sani Kiau triumphantly announced, "This June 7th flight by the U.S. Air Force's C-130 Globemaster III from Niamey, Base 101, marks the start of a series of several wide-body rotations for the repatriation of personnel and equipment in accordance with the Niger Agreement." Both countries signed an agreement on May 19th for the withdrawal of American troops. Since then, more than 269 items out of 946 and several tons of equipment have already left Niger, according to Kiau. U.S. Major General Kenneth Ekman feebly attempted to save face by announcing the establishment of a joint committee to facilitate the coordination of the disengagement process. This committee is a clear sign of the disarray and incompetence that has plagued the U.S. mission. Prior to this ignominious retreat, over 1,000 U.S. troops were stationed at 2 bases in Niger, tasked with the dubious mission of spying on various militant groups in West Africa. Niger's decision to end its partnership with the U.S. was a direct response to Washington's condescending attitude and threats of reprisals, as pointed out by military spokesperson Colonel Amadou Abdramane in March. This scathing criticism of U.S. diplomacy and military strategy in the region further underscores the complete and utter failure of American efforts. Adding to the embarrassment, Niger also expelled French troops in 2022 after an 8-year partnership, accusing Paris of being unable to suppress terrorists in the region. The U.S. now finds itself in similar disgrace, its military prowess and diplomatic efforts revealed as ineffectual and arrogant in the eyes of its former allies.
Here's what they were chanting on Monday night outside the Vancouver Art Gallery.
Do not wonder how revolution can be done. We must do it. Death to Canada. Death to the United States. And death to Israel.
They say globalism comes to die at CPAC. I'm here to tell you that in El Salvador, it's already dead. But if you want globalism to die here too, you must be willing to unapologetically fight against everything and everyone that stands for it. Fight for your freedoms. Fight for your rights.
Our traditional politicians and oligarchs are the ones who plunge the country into misery with the complicity of international communities, particularly the USA, Canada, and France. They are the ones who put the country in this misery. Today, I am fighting against the system.
Here's what they were chanting on Monday night outside the Vancouver Art Gallery.
Do not wonder how revolution can be done. We must do it.
Why was the former Prime Minister of Congo, Patrice Lumumba, murdered? How come the CIA and Belgian authorities had their hand in his assassination? Not only that, but what about Thomas Sankara, the revolutionary leader and president of Burkina Faso, and Muammar Gaddafi, the president of Libya? The list goes on, but in the assassination of these African leaders, we saw a pattern. All of them were threats to the West. In other words, they stood against the West's influence and exploitation in Africa, and became a challenge so big that there was no other option than to terminate them. That's when one starts to understand why most African leaders have remained silent and submissive to the West until now. But today, things have changed, and African leaders are challenging Western dominance and rejecting and kicking them out of the continent. Leaders like President Ibrahim Traoré and others have vowed to do what cost earlier leaders their lives. The West is not silent and is plotting against them, using covert and dirty tactics. So, what are the West plots and which African leaders are on the hit list? Number 1 on the West's hit list is Captain Ibrahim Traoré. Traoré played a significant role in the January 2022 Burkina Faso coup d'etat, supporting the patriotic movement for safeguard and restoration military junta. Dissatisfied with junta leader Damiba's handling of the jihadist insurgency, Traoré and fellow officers attempted to refocus Damiba, but eventually opted to overthrow him. Traoré declared himself head of the junta and interim president in October 2022, committing to democratic elections in July 2024. As president, Traoré maintained a formal demeanor, carefully controlling communication to project strength. He expelled French forces in February 2023, expressing a desire for diverse international partnerships. Traoré's government endorsed a federation with Mali, inviting Guinea, and sought closer ties with Turkey and Russia.
So here's some more from the WF Klaus Schwab, the people who are going to run your life. Klaus Schwab is getting worried. His WEF 2030 agenda has been exposed by his own arrogance about having penetrated the cabinets with his WEF puppets like Sunak in the UK, also Trudeau in Canada, and they now fear the masses rising in a revolution against the elitists and the globalists. New World Order. He attacks Brexit and criticizes Trump 2024. They are becoming afraid. So watch this. So now they've been talking openly about having all their WEF little buddies in all the cabinets and all the Western governments.
Yeah, for the stakeholders.
And he said that out loud. Now people know, and people are getting upset about it. Well, here's what he says now.
For this reason, what we have seen in the elections in the United States, in the Brexit vote, this anger of people against globalization and against the elites. If you look what's happening in the United States, particularly, you have this anti-system movement. What we are seeing is a revolution against the system. It's dismantling the system, and we see certain elements of this now in the new US administration.
So he's saying, oh my God, but the people are rising up against the system that we created, that we've entrapped them in. People are rising up against it. And by the way, the most important thing to remember about this is none of it's a conspiracy.
These dark forces are already taking over your country. You may not see it yet, but it's already happening. You don't see it as clearly because people are designed to see linear changes, not exponential ones. We don't always recognize how fast a problem can multiply and spiral out of control. The problem is much like the metaphor of the boiling frog. Once the water boils, it's already too late. People fail to see these things. It's our nature. Just like the frog, people become complacent and they don't realize how bad things are getting until it's too late.
Malcolm X speaks.
Events be out of our control. As many of you know, Sunday morning about 3 o'clock, somebody threw some bombs inside my house. Normally, I wouldn't get excited over a few bombs, but the ones who threw these not only aimed them in rooms where there was no one, but aimed them in rooms where 3 of my daughters sleep. One daughter 6, one daughter 4, and one daughter 2.
Proclamation expressing a willingness to explore alternative partnerships, strongly emphasizing fostering win-win collaborations and diversifying Burkina Faso's international relationships. Subsequently, Traoré's government supported a federation with Mali and invited Guinea to join. All 3 nations are presently under military leadership, and if the union were to materialize, it would represent the largest country governed by military authorities. Since assuming leadership, Traoré has faced multiple unsuccessful coup attempts. Speculation persists that some of these attempts may be linked to Western influences.
Before we get into it, I would like to point out also, as many of you know, last Tuesday or last weekend, I was invited to address the first Congress of the Council of African Organizations in London. They had a 4-day Congress from the 5th, 6th, 7th, and 8th, and had invited me there to make the closing address and bring the delegates from the various African organizations that are situated on the European continent up to date in regards to the struggle of the black man in this country in his quest for human rights and human dignity. And in conjunction with that invitation, I had gotten an invitation to visit Paris from the Afro-American community in Paris, which was sponsoring a rally in conjunction with the African community. And I was supposed to go there Tuesday also and address them and let them know the state of development or lack of development of our progress in this country for human rights or toward human rights. As many of you know, when I got to Paris, the man said I couldn't come in. Some man, French man. They gave me no explanation other than to say, we have our orders. They wouldn't let me phone the American embassy, and they tried to imply that the American embassy was behind it, which I told them that I didn't know de Gaulle had become a satellite of Lyndon B. Johnson. I knew that Kennedy had made a satellite out of Khrushchev and Britain and half of these other countries, but I didn't think that France was a satellite of the United States. Well, this made them angry because they like to be independent, you know, or pretend to be independent. But they wouldn't let me in. They wouldn't let me phone the American embassy. And later on, when I got back in London, and by the way, when I got back to London, there was about 20 different delegates. There were delegates from about 20 different African organizations on hand at the airport, and they were going to raise hell if anything had happened other than what should have happened. As it was, I re-entered England with no trouble, and immediately got in telephone contact with the brothers and sisters who were in Paris by telephone. And they pointed out that they had encountered some difficulty, first from the communist trade union workers. Mind you, communist trade union workers had prevented them from renting their hall, and when they went to get another hall, the same communist group had exercised its influence to prevent them from getting that hall. And finally, when they did get a hall, evidently someone was strong enough to exercise influence over the French government. And I might add that while I was in custody of the French, every time I made a request, before they would say yes or no, they telephoned the French Foreign Ministry, so that they were taking their orders from someone as high up in the French Foreign Ministry who did not want me to enter France. And there's a reason for it. I don't blame them. And I told them while I was there that maybe my plane got mixed up, and I was in South Africa, in the wrong country. I told them this couldn't be Paris, it must be Johannesburg. And they got red. And you know how they can get red. One of them was pink. The same thing happened in England, as many of you probably read in the Sunday Times and Tribune. there was a great fear in England concerning me speaking to the West Indian community. And this is because England has a very serious color problem developing because so many of our people are migrating there from the British West Indies. France, quietly as it is kept, has a very serious color problem developing because of the migration to France of our people from the French West Indies. And with these people from the French West Indies, black people going to France, others from the British West Indies going to England, coupled with the Asians who are coming from the Commonwealth territories, along with the Africans from French Equatorial West Africa, formerly into France, and the British possessions into Britain. There's a large, increasing number of dark-skinned people swelling the dark population of France and Britain, and it's giving them a great deal of cause for worry. The only difference over there and over here being that no one of black skin in France has ever tried to unite the dark-skinned people together, neither have they done so in England. So you can somewhat see what their fear is. No effort has been made to unite the Afro-American community or the American Negro community with the West Indian community, and then those two communities with the African community, and those communities with the Asian community. This has never been done in either England or France. But when I was in France, my journey was to Mecca to make myself an authentic Muslim and to bring them there up to date on the problems that our people who are Muslims have. Soon as we established our religious authenticity with the Muslim world, we set up the Organization of Afro-American Unity and took immediate steps to make certain that we would be in direct contact with our African brothers on the African continent. So the first step that has been taken, brothers and sisters, since Garvey died, to actually establish contact between the 22 million black Americans with our brothers and sisters back home was done by two organizations. Done first by the Muslim Mosque, which gave us direct ties with our brothers and sisters in Asia and Africa who are Muslims. And you know we've got to unite with them because there are 700 million Muslims. And we sure need to stop being the minority and become part of the majority. So, as Muslims, we united with our Muslim brothers in Asia and Africa, and as members of the Organization of African or Afro-American Unity, we set out on a program to unite our people on this continent with our people on the mother continent. And this frightened many interests in this country. Many people in this country who want to see us the minority and who don't want to see us taking too militant or too uncompromising a stand are absolutely against the successful regrouping or organizing of any faction in this country whose thought and whose thinking pattern is international rather than national, whose thought pattern, whose hopes and aspirations are worldly rather than just within the context of the United States border or the borderline of the United States. So this has been the purpose of the OAAU and also the Muslim Mosque, to give us direct links, direct contacts, direct communication and cooperation with our brothers and sisters all over the earth. And once we are successful in uniting ourselves with our people all over the world, it puts us in a position where we no longer are a minority who can be abused and walked upon. We become a part of the majority. And then if this man over here plays too rough, we got some brothers who can play as rough as he.
After weeks of protests, Prime Minister Justin Trudeau is taking drastic action to put an end to the Freedom Convoy protests.
The time to go home is now.
Trudeau invoking emergency powers, allowing the government to remove cars and trucks, suspend their insurance, and even freeze truckers' personal and corporate bank accounts. He says the powers will be limited in scope and that he's not calling in the military.
The Emergencies Act will be used to strengthen and support law enforcement agencies at all levels across the country.
Meanwhile, traffic is moving again across the Ambassador Bridge, the busiest land border crossing between the U.S. and Canada.
The blockade at our border in Windsor has now come to an end. The Ambassador Bridge has reopened.
Officials, though, are turning back non-Canadians trying to join the blockade that's brought weeks of protest over vaccine mandates and COVID restrictions to Ottawa and disrupted daily life. On Sunday, 24 people were arrested. Officials are also blocking donations for truckers. A Canadian judge freezing more than $8 million in donations to a crowdfunding site.
This is probably going to be the fight of my life.
Heather Wilson, co-founder of the U.S.-based crowdfunding site GiveSendGo, is fighting back.
We're going to continue this fight for freedom. This is absolutely insane that governments think they can step in and trample on people's God-given rights.
And the company has broad support. So far, nearly $9 million have been raised through GiveSendGo for these truckers. Jenna Browder, CBN News.
Do not wonder how revolution can be done. We must do it.
We also had many apparently isolated problems in the 60s and the 70s. And we failed to realize as a country the severity of them until it became a civil war. By the time we reacted, it was already too late. We were already boiled, like the frog. Big cities in decline, like Baltimore, Portland, New York, just to name a few. Places where crime and drugs have become the daily norm, and even accepted and promoted by the government. How many young people have you lost to the streets of Philadelphia or San Francisco, to fentanyl? Did we see these apocalyptic sites 15, 10, 5 years ago? Can you imagine how it will be in the next 5, 10, or 15 years? But jumping out of the water when it's already boiling is an almost impossible feat. We arrested the terrorists, but we have to remove corrupt judges and corrupt attorneys and prosecutors. These corrupt judges and prosecutors were setting the gang members free. And it wasn't just the gangs. The corrupt system worked in tandem with the so-called international community, the NGOs, and of course the fake news, just like it happens here in the United States. Unelected bureaucrats are trying to instate public policy. Who elected them if the elections are free and fair? I mean, who elected Soros to dictate public policy and laws? Why does he feel entitled to impose his agenda? Let me tell you something. Soros and his cronies hit a brick wall in El Salvador. Thank God, another glory be to him, Salvadorans are now immune to his influence. No one believes his lies anymore over there. The people of El Salvador have woken up, and so can you. The global elites, they hate our success, and they fear yours. The people's free will to choose their leaders is something they despise, because they cannot control that. You have experienced this firsthand here in the United States. The global elites control the mainstream media, they finance campaigns, district attorneys, to mention a few. They abuse their powers. They persecute political opponents. In El Salvador, we don't weaponize our judicial system to persecute our political opponents. A practice that may sound familiar to you, but we don't do that there. And who's the dictator? The global elites in the media, they work in conjunction, they run some stories and publish them, same pictures to reinforce their agendas. You're no strangers to that here in the United States. We deal with that in El Salvador too. That is the free press that they talk about. please. I always criticize the defenders of institutionalism, not because I don't think strong institutions are paramount and necessary for a democracy, but because I find them very hypocritical. They don't seem to have the same standards for themselves as they are trying to impose on others. But there's yet another component that is more dangerous than a simple double standard. Institutions were created to serve the people and not the other way around. Somewhere along the way, those people forgot their fundamental purpose, which is more important than the institution itself. When the judicial system was created, it was created out of the necessity to bring justice. But now, it seems that survival and control of the judges, of the AGs, among others, are paramount. And the need to bring justice is merely a little more than an afterthought. Another example, the police was created to bring law and order. Let them seek law and order then. But now some of them are even afraid to do their job because they fear the consequences for doing it. They should be encouraged to fulfill their foundational roles without fear of repercussions that distract them from their missions. If the police was created to bring law and order, let them bring law and order. If the judicial system was created to bring justice, let them bring justice. Let them protect their purpose at all costs. Same goes with the press. Let them be free. A democracy needs a free press. But to enjoy that membership, you must adhere to your duty as a reporter. Report the facts. Don't be a puppet of those who finance you or finance the organizations that you work for. Your freedom of speech will always be protected. We believe in free speech. Everyone here believes in free speech. Your free speech will always be protected. But don't call yourself a journalist if you're just an activist. Don't call yourself independent if you depend in open society. Sarah's NGO for those sacred institutions have morphed away from the reason they were created. We should not defend those institutions for the sake of being institutions. Instead, we should defend the principles that created those institutions in the first place. It's troubling to see that this is happening everywhere. Not only in El Salvador and the United States, it's happening everywhere. But even here, in the United States, in the most powerful country in the world, even here, it's happening. America should listen to these words, not because the El Salvador model should be replicated here, but because these specific examples apply to any nation that has lost or is losing its way. Ask yourself why this is happening, who is supporting it, and whether it's by ignorance or by choice. And fight it. Fight it with all your heart and soul, and be the beacon of hope. And be the beacon of hope that your founding fathers, with all their faults like every human being has, dreamt for your country. Fight for your freedoms, for your rights. Fight for the original purpose of these institutions and not their mere existence. It's still not too late. It can be done. It is time to erase these new paradigms that have been imposed in the recent years that make no sense. If you just free your minds from those invisible chains, you could do it. This shift is an extremely dangerous trend that undermines these institutions. Effectiveness and their credibility is at stake, both home and abroad. This is a warning from a friend. You should adhere to their foundational principles and purposes and denounce this new institutionalism. Now, you would think that's it, as it wasn't enough, right? But unfortunately, there's more. There are other symptoms that are even more difficult to diagnose. For instance, the financial situation of the United States. When I talk to my conservative friends right here, they always tell me that the problem is high taxes. But they're wrong. Of course, high taxes are extremely high here in the United States. I give you that. You're right in that. But that's not the real problem. The real problem is not the high taxes themselves, but the fact that they are not even really funding the government. Not even those high taxes, higher than a lot of places in the world, not even those taxes are really funding the government. So who's financing the government? Government is financed by treasury bonds, paper. And who buys the treasury bonds? Mostly the Fed. And how does the Fed buy them? By printing money. But what backing does the Fed have for that money being printed? The treasury bonds themselves. So basically, you finance the government by printing money out of thin air. Someone could ask, well, so if the government can print the limited amounts of money out of thin air, why do they collect taxes? I mean, in theory, it would make sense, right? If they can print unlimited amounts of money, why would they need taxes for? The answer is simple, but it's very shocking. The real problem is that you pay high taxes only to uphold the illusion that you are funding the government, which you are not. It's shocking, but it's true. The government is funded by money printing, paper backed with paper, a bubble that will inevitably burst. The situation is even worse than it seems, because if most Americans and the rest of the world were to become aware of this farce, confidence in your currency would be lost, the dollar would fall, and the Western civilization with it. If the next president of the United States doesn't make the necessary policies and structural changes, sooner or later that bubble will burst. There's still time. You don't have to make the same mistakes we did in the 60s and the 70s. You can still jump before the water boils. Winning the election isn't enough to solve these problems. They will not simply go away as a consequence of an electoral result. It would take a total re-engineering of the government, top to bottom. It will entail making difficult decisions, like the ones we made in El Salvador since 2019, and they're already paying off. It will be hard. The system will push back, but you have the right to determine your own fate. Salvadorans did the same. The decision for the direction of our nation was ours, and it continues to be ours. We didn't tolerate being told what to do. In doing so, we did the unthinkable. Against all adversity, we transformed El Salvador from the most dangerous country in the world to the safest in the Western Hemisphere. We did it by defying the global elites. We told them no more. And that is my message to you. Put up the fight, because it is, in the end, it will be worth it. It has been for us, and you will have your country back. May God bless you. May God bless the people of the United States. May God bless El Salvador and the future of both our nations.
Blunt. Here's what they were chanting on Monday night outside the Vancouver Art Gallery.
Do not wonder how revolution can